G'day, I'm Warwick Schiller and welcome back to part 4, or is it part 5, one or the other, of introducing the snaffle to a young warmblood mare we have here. So if you watch part 1, you would have seen that I worked on making sure I could get her to open her mouth, make sure I could touch her ears, and then the first thing I put in her mouth was actually the lead rope, because then there's no chance of banging it on their teeth or anything like that and having a bad experience. Then in the second video, the second step was I actually put the snaffle on, and in that one I made the point that I'm going to use my thumb to have her open her mouth, and then I'm going to pick up on the top of the bridle with this hand, which puts the snaffle in her mouth. You're not shoving it in with this hand. All I'm doing is opening her mouth here, and as her mouth opens, I just pick up on this one. The snaffle goes in. The third video was of, I'm trying to think, it's been a few days now. The third video, I think, was of her, we turned her loose in the round pen and just let her wear it until she was comfortable with it. And in that step there, we all did this all the same day because she was good with it. But sometimes you might have to put the snaffle on a horse and let them hang out with it for, 4 or 5 days before they're comfortable with it. But the big thing is that you do not start to do anything with them, with the snaffle, until they're completely comfortable with it. It's just like they're the same with the snaffle in their mouth as they are out of their mouth. It's a very step-by-step process. And then the next step was I put a little thin cord on the snaffle and just started working on just a little bit of lateral flexion. And I just showed you guys a short amount, but I did it on both sides. You just didn't see that, but it's just about picking up and just waiting for them to, if their ears aren't on you, wait for them to flick an ear. And if the ear flicks, I'll let go. If the ear's already on you, I'll just wait for a bit of a turn right there. But the big thing is you are not pulling when you do that. You just pick up and your hand is holding. So your hand is in one place in space. It's not it's not here, and if the horse's head moves, it's going to go to there. It's here, and if the horse's head moves, it stays in the same place. So those are the steps that I have shown you. And so the next step after that is we would ride the horse in whatever we've been riding them in, whether it's a rope halter or it's a whatever thing we've been riding them in. In the case of this mare, I've got a little soft cotton rope hackamore, so it's got 3/4 inch soft cotton rope in it, and it's got like a latigo braided noseband and a heel knot. We've been riding her in that. So all we did was we put the snaffle on her and rode her around with the snaffle over the top of that thing. There was no reins on the snaffle. And so that is the next step, is get your horse to where you ride around, and they ride around the same when the snaffle's in their mouth with no reins on it as they are when there is reins on it. And with her, that didn't take very long. And the thing with, before I ever go to the snaffle, my horse has to steer quite well just when I pick up on the rein. There's no pulling to steer. I don't really want them to dive when they steer. I don't want them to turn stiffly. I don't want them to just turn. I want them to, when I pick up on the reins, I want that nose to come and the body to just follow it up and around. So what the dressage people would call straight. When that bit is good, when that bit was good, then all we did was we put some reins on the snaffle, worked on a little bit of lateral flexion in the snaffle, just so Kendall, that works for me, she's been riding this mare, so she hopped on, just worked on a little bit of that. Sometimes she might, if she picked up on it and that mare wasn't responding at all, we didn't pull harder, we just waited for the ear to flick and then we would let go, and then pretty soon you could pick up and her nose would kind of follow that around. We did that on both sides, and then we just rode her around as usual. And the first day riding her in the snaffle was, it looked like she'd been riding it forever, because she knows how to steer following a feel of the reins. Okay, it's not the pulling on her that makes her steer. When you just take her hand to the side and they just feel the slack coming out of that rein, they will just steer and turn. And so the first day riding her around in the snaffle, she walked, trotted and cantered, and when she trotted and we turned her, she just turned up and around, you know, in a nice bend, without, you know, using a whole bunch of tools like your inside leg or anything, or bumping or anything like that. You just pick up and around she went. And then the same thing at the canter, you know, cantering around. Kendall could just pick up and that mare would just softly steer. I think the first few times she went to steer her, maybe at the canter or the trot, she picked up and nothing happened. So it was just like the standstill when you worked on the lateral flexion. Just wait for her to just offer a little bit, but you don't take more, you just pick up and wait for it. And you know, she rode around really well, and if you saw a video of her riding around, you would not think it was her first day in the snaffle. But the big thing is there's no pulling going on, and the other thing is we're not using two reins to stop. You know, this mare, if we want to stop, we can just relax our seat and she'll slow down, or we could bend it to a stop if we wanted to. But she hasn't been pulled on with two reins in that rope hackamore, and she certainly didn't get pulled on with two reins in that snaffle. And I think a lot of people have trouble with horses rooting and stuff in any headgear is because they don't really get the rein connected to the rib cage to the hind foot. All the steering where they bend and go up and around, the bending to a stop, all that stuff really connects this rein to this rib cage to this hind foot. So when you pick up on the rein, it's a whole body experience. And I don't usually start picking up on two reins for quite a while, and when I do, they will be standing perfectly still, and I'll teach them to back up. Okay, and if you know, that's where I first start teaching them to stop off both reins, is from a standstill, from 0 miles an hour to -1 mile an hour. And this process that you've seen through all this, through the, you know, introducing that rope into their mouth, the snaffle in their mouth, then letting them wear it, and then the lateral flexion, and then eventually riding them around with the snaffle but no reins on it, and then riding them and with reins on it and steering them, and making sure you're not pulling on that thing. This is for me, it's the key to success to having horses be good in the snaffle. And I think in one of the very early videos, it might have been number 2 or number 3, I said something about, you know, people tell me, oh, my horse he's got a fat mouth, a skinny mouth, a short mouth, a tall mouth, and I have a, you know, 16-piece dog bone snaffle and all, you know, I've got this special bit for them. I really think that, I mean, I've never really used anything other than a smooth snaffle, and like you saw with this one, it was no problem. But I do have a process to make sure that, you know, I don't need to buy something rather level 3 bit, or, you know, all sorts of technical stuff. I just make sure there is no skipping steps along the way, and I'm very empathetic to the horse's plight, and I've got a very step-by-step process, and it always turns out pretty successful. So if you want to work on introducing your horse to the snaffle, that's how I go about it. That's probably more steps than a lot of people, but that's how I go about it. If you someone had asked me when I put the first video out about rehabilitating one that's got a problem with the snaffle, you know, that's kind of hard. I had an off-the-track thoroughbred here a couple of years ago, and I rode him around, you know, in the hackamore or whatever, and he was really good in that. And then I thought, oh, I'm going to start to introduce the snaffle. And the first day I put the snaffle on him, you know, he'd been a racehorse, a slow racehorse, and then he'd also been a jumping horse too. So he'd had some, you know, poor communication with that snaffle, and he was a completely different horse just wearing the snaffle. And I actually gave up, because with the snaffle in his mouth, he wasn't getting any better. Like, he had so much trauma to that snaffle, he was not the same horse. And this is just wearing the snaffle like this mare did, you know, he wasn't the same horse. And so I thought, oh well, I can ride him in the hackamore. So I just kept riding him in the hackamore. Anyway, that's the short story, or the long story, of the process to riding a horse in a snaffle for the first time. And like all the processes, if you do it right, the first time you ask for something, it's quite easy. So it's, you know, it's once again, it's only asking yes questions. And I made sure all the way along that every question I asked was a yes question.